Alright, so I don't have a cute video tonight because I have been kind of struggling all week with what we're going to talk about. So I knew that we had just finished our series, Ripple Effects. I knew that we were having a night where I was asking you to bring your friends, so I was really kind of going back and forth and what would be the appropriate thing to talk about. Something that would have a good impact on us, those of us who are here every single week, and then something that would still be relevant and something that would be meaningful to those who may have never been here before, maybe don't go to church regularly. And so I've been struggling through and kind of praying through that. And this one passage kind of came to mind, and I thought, no, that's not the one. And I kept kind of steering away from it. And the more I would pray about it, this kept coming up and coming up, even to the point that my wife had mentioned something to me totally unrelated about this passage this week, which really just kind of encouraged in my mind that this was it. It's not the one I wanted to talk about, but it's the one I feel like God wanted us to. Now, most of us, if we grew up in church at all, if you've been in Sunday school, you've heard this story, right? The story of Rahab. Most of us are familiar with who she is. Even if you didn't grow up in Sunday school or you didn't grow up in church, you probably know parts of this story. Maybe you just don't know that you do. But tonight I want to talk to you about something that's very familiar to most of us. But I'm willing to bet that you've never heard it or never thought about it from this particular perspective. I'm going to set the scene for you. So we've got the Israelites, God's people. They're enslaved by Egypt. Right? There's millions of them, at least 2 million on the most conservative estimates. They're enslaved by Egypt. The Pharaoh's got them working night and day, doing all of this slave labor. And here's this shepherd guy, Moses. And God's like, hey, Moses, I just want you to go tell the king that all my people are just going to leave. And Moses goes through this series of telling God how he's got the wrong guy. God goes through this series of telling him, just don't worry about it, do what I say. Moses goes. And he gives the famous line to Pharaoh, let my people go. And what's Pharaoh's response? No. Why would I give up an entire 1 million to 2 million people free labor? Why would I give that away to just some random guy who comes and says, let my people go? So he says no. So then God goes through this series of 10 plagues that he puts against Egypt. Very specific plagues to kind of spit in the face of the Egyptian gods that they had, showing that the one true God was more powerful than all of their gods. By the time he gets to the 10th one, Pharaoh's had enough. He says, fine, just get out. It's not even worth the trouble. So Moses takes all these people, they're running away, leaving as fast as they can, and then Pharaoh changes his mind. He realizes all that he's losing. So he sends his army to chase after them. The Israelites are kind of pinned in by the sea on one side. Now they're just like, well, we're kind of sitting ducks. And so God does another miracle in their lives. And he splits the Red Sea in half. And they walk across on dry land. As soon as the last Israelite gets across, he undoes the parting of the sea and drowns all of Pharaoh's army behind them. So they're on their way to this land that God's promising. It's about a 2 or 3 week trip. It took them considerably longer. About a 2 or 3 week trip. But through a series of them just constantly complaining about the way God did things, constantly complaining about the provision he provided, through a series of Moses doing things against God, they ended up wandering around for 40 years looking for this place that was 2 weeks away. So where we are right now in this story, Moses has just died. There's a guy named Joshua who's coming up behind him, and he's like the number 2 in command. Moses has groomed him to take over, and God finally says after 40 years, okay, it's time. The place that I promised you, the place that you've waited patiently for, it's right there, it's ready. But in God fashion, he doesn't just say, here you go. He says, it's over there, now you go take it. And so he sends them over. They have a couple little battles on this side of the river before they get there. And as they cross the river and begin to invade this land, because somebody else already lives there. It isn't just an empty land. People live there. They come to a place called Jericho. Now most of us have probably heard of Jericho. If you've ever seen VeggieTales, you've heard of Jericho. Right? Jericho is this like super fortified city. It's got this massive wall that's about 12 to 15 feet wide, super tall, extra fortified city. This is an attacking army's nightmare. If they were to try to siege this city, a couple years at best case scenario till they could breach. So they come up to this city with these massive walls. And like I said, if you've seen VeggieTales, you know what happens. You know the end of the story, but there's a lot right here in the middle that we tend to just kind of speed past. Joshua sends a couple spies in to check the city out. Kind of look for weak spots. They end up staying the night in the house of a prostitute. Now that doesn't sound extra godly, right? You got these godly men going into the city to check it out, and they end up staying with a prostitute. That's kind of the point. What was the last place you would look for one of God's people to be spying on your city would be in the home of a prostitute? So they're staying in one of the bedrooms of this prostitute's house, and word gets out. So the king finds out that they're there, and that's what we're going to pick up in Joshua chapter 2, verse 2. It says, "But someone told the king of Jericho, some Israelites have come here tonight and spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab, bring out the men who have come into your house. They have come here to spy out the whole land. Rahab had hidden the two men, but she replied, yes, the men were here earlier, but I didn't know where they were from. They left the town at dusk if the gates were about to close. I don't know where they went, but if you hurry, you can probably catch up with them. Actually, she'd taken them up to the roof and hidden them beneath bundles of flax she laid out. So the king's men come looking. They find out that they're there. They come looking for them. And she decides that she's going to cover them. This prostitute decides she's going to cover for these spies in her city. And she says, yeah, they were here, but they took off. If you hurry, maybe you can catch them. So the soldiers, they take the bait. And they just head off chasing nobody. Now, being a prostitute, though, Rahab, she was street smart. She knew nothing comes from it. It's kind of a you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of moment. She wanted a favor in return. So she heads up to the roof after all the soldiers are gone, where these guys are at. She has this conversation with them starting in verse 9. She says, I know the Lord has given you this land. We're all afraid of it. Everyone in this land is living in terror. And that's kind of weird, because nobody in Jericho was scared of anybody in Rahab. They knew they had their wall. They were never afraid of anybody, but they could tell that the reputation of these Israelites was already starting to grow. It says, for we have heard how the Lord made a dry path for you to the Red Sea when you left Egypt. And we know what you did to the two Amorite kings east of the Jordan River, whose people you completely destroyed. No wonder our hearts melted in fear. No one has the courage to fight after hearing such things. For the Lord your God is the supreme God of the heavens above, the earth below. So God's reputation is already beginning to spread. They've just made it to this side of the river. Here's the favor. She says, now swear to me by the Lord that you will be kind to me, God bless you, and my family, since I've helped you. Give me some guarantee that when Jericho is conquered, you will let me live, along with my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all their families. So the spies hear this, they're like, yeah, that's the least we can do. You saved our life. Like, the least we can do is spare you yours, so they agree with it. Since her house is built into the wall, she has a window going outside. So she lowers this rope down, she sends them out. She kind of tells them, here's this place, and you go hide over there, like I know how that search party works. Just hang out here for a few days. When they come back, they're home free. But then we read, right before they leave, what I believe is the most important verse in this entire passage. In verse 18. When we come into the land, you must leave this scarlet rope hanging from the window through which you let us down. And all your family members, your father, mother, brothers, and all your relatives must be inside the house. So they tell them, hang this rope from your window. So that way we know which one's yours. It doesn't really seem that cool. It's just signaling so they know where to go. If that's the most important passage in here, most of you know what's about to happen. You know some big things. God's about to do some really big things. So why then is this the most important verse in the entire passage? I'm going to explain it to you. See, that little red rope was a symbol. They didn't have electricity back then, obviously. So that rope was basically a red light. It was a symbol that would hang outside of Rahab's door and let everybody know who she was, what she was, and that she was open for business. That rope was a label that she carried every single day. It was something that she would have to look at over and over. She'd sit at her table and eat her cinnamon toast crunch in the morning. She would look over at it, hanging by the door, and it would be a reminder of all the labels everybody had given her entire life. That this was her life now. See, a prostitute in those days couldn't just decide, hey, I'm going to go pursue a new profession. Once you had made that choice, once you had chosen that lifestyle, that was a mark that you carried forever. Nobody was going to hire you to go get anything else. You're stuck. And that small piece of rope, that little red cord, was a constant reminder to Rahab of her shame and her guilt and her sin and her labels, of an identity that she could never escape. Just a prostitute, doing one thing, nothing else. And that thing is what they chose for her to hang from her window. She had to be thinking, as they picked that, like, really, of everything in my house, that has to be the thing that you choose. But there was a purpose far beyond what she understood, a purpose far beyond what they understood when they chose them. It's a purpose of redemption, regeneration, forgiveness. So for those who know the story, for those who have seen it, you know how the story goes. A few days later, the spies come back. They tell Joshua everything that's happened, everything that went through, their conversation with Rahab. Joshua prays. He asks God, okay, what's the next move? Do we come in and fight? And God sends in the marching band. Where are my band people at? I know we got a few of them. Got a few back there. Rosie. This is like y'all's biblical moment to shine right here. Joshua asks God, how are we going to take over this city? And he says, we're sending a band. So he sends the people to walk around the city once a day for 6 days, with the band leading the way. And on the 7th day, he tells them to walk 7 times around, completely silent. No one's allowed to speak. Not even idle conversation. Not, did you bring an extra pair of socks? My feet hurt. Nothing. Silence. 7 times around the city. On the 7th time around, the band strikes up. They begin to play. Everybody screams. And this protection, these fortified walls, the thing that had separated Jericho from everybody else, the thing that was impenetrable to keep the Israelites out, and crashing down on its own. And the Israelites ran and sacked the city. They took the city. They spared Rahab and all of her family. So if that's the case, if this is the end of the story, and God just did this crazy big thing, he sent the marching band to break the entire tower or wall down, to take this impenetrable, impossible to permeate city, then why is chapter 2, verse 18 really that big a deal? I mean, isn't the big, the most in-your-face miracle, like tearing walls down with music, isn't that the biggest part of the story? What if I told you that God breaking down the walls of Jericho was not even close to the biggest miracle that happened? Let's go back to Rahab and her red cord. I told you what that cord represented. Shame, humiliation, guilt. It was a representation of an identity that she would never escape. Yet despite what everyone had always told her she was, despite what she had told herself she was, God saw something different. Let me ask you, do you think God just changed his mind at the last minute and was like, dude, all right, everybody's going to meet in the marching band, we're going to give it a shot? Did he just change his mind, decided now that this is how we're going to do it? It just kind of occurred to him that, hey, I'm God, I can break the wall down. Do you think he just decided that's how he was going to do it, or did he know from the beginning that was his plan? The Bible said God never changes his mind. That he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That God has a plan. God knew exactly what he was going to do to Jericho from the very beginning. If that's true, why did he send this fast? There's no strategic or military benefit to sending people into a city that you were just going to walk around and beat. Why risk the lives of 2 of your best men when you knew in the end it would win? Because Rahab mattered. See, God didn't see just another prostitute. God didn't see the things that she'd done, the things that she was doing, the life she lived, the choices she made. That wasn't what God saw when he looked at her. God saw the girl that he created. He saw the purpose that he had for her from the very beginning. He saw a broken woman who had resigned to label after label after label being stuck on her. And he loved her exactly how she was. To the spies, they didn't sneak into the city and risk their lives for Israel. They did it for Rahab. They just didn't know it. God used the scarlet cord as the symbol. What for years had been the symbol of everything wrong with her. For years had been the symbol of her shame, of her bad choices, of what could have been in her life. that she would look at and hold in her hand with tears in her eyes, wishing she'd made a better choice, feeling like it was too late. And the source of her shame became the symbol of her salvation. He will do the exact same in your life. I know that because my life is living proof of exactly that. More often than not, our greatest testimony in life rises from our deepest pain. The thing that hurts you the most is where God will step in the most, do the biggest things, and allow the biggest impact in your life. Not just to bring us to this place of redemption, but to replace the images in our own mind. For years, when Rahab would see that piece of rope, it would be in a negative light. She would probably shudder at the sight of that. But from this moment on, it was something different altogether. When she would walk by a house with a scarlet cord on the door, there would be a totally different thought process in her mind. It was now a symbol of a God who loved her. Not just someone else who wanted something from her, but a God who loved her unconditionally, exactly how she was. And Rahab will play a really vital role moving forward. See, when you look through the Bible, when you go through those genealogies, that we tend to skip, if we're being honest. Nobody really reads those, right? But if you look through them, women aren't typically mentioned very often. When you look through the family line, the bloodline of Jesus, one name sticks out. Prostitute named Rahab. Someone who at one point their life was sick. At one point, she was stuck in this cycle of shame and guilt and regret, repeat, with no way out. God went out of his way to find her, to redeem her, and ultimately to use her to bring his Son, our Redeemer, to this world. So there's something really important that you need to know. Just like God had a plan for Rahab, he has a plan for your life. And here's the most important thing that I can tell you. If you never come back here, you're like, "Dude, that guy's weird," and the light kept shining off his bald spot, I'm not coming back. Don't forget this. God has a plan for you, and no matter what you've done, you haven't messed up. No matter what you've done, you have not messed up God's plan for your life. If Rahab couldn't ruin God's plan for her life, you're not ruining God's plan for your life. God can and will use the very source of guilt and shame in your life as a symbol of redemption, if you let it. I don't know a lot of you. I don't know your story. I don't know where you're from. I don't know what you did yesterday, much less last week, last month, last year. But I know that if we were to take a poll, 100 out of 100 people in this room would say, "Hey, I've done some things, right? I've made some choices. I've made some mistakes. Sometimes they weren't even mistakes. I just did the wrong things." There are things that if I could go back in time, man, I would change it. I would have made those choices different. We all have those things that just kind of linger in our minds. Maybe not every day, maybe not all the time, but we kind of fall back on those things. I'm here to tell you that God wants to take those things in your life and completely turn them around. That when you think back on those parts of your life, you don't have to try to avoid them. They don't send that chill down your spine. They don't make those tears well up in your eyes. That you look at them as something that God has used amazingly in your life. That is a point where now you can reach into somebody else's life who's in the same mess and say, "Hey, I've got some hope for you." If you'll let it. God has a plan for you. Nothing you have done has messed that up.